how do they begin the diet? What does the beginning look like? And then we can get into how that might change over time.
Yeah, so in the book, I start people with a lower carbohydrate paleo diet. It's got about 90 grams of carbohydrate in a day rather than going directly to a ketogenic diet. The reason I mention that people ease into this is because, let's say the person that you're talking about has been eating a really high carbohydrate, highly processed diet for a long time. Let's say they've been eating a lot of sugars and cereals and flours and that sort of thing for a long time. They're probably eating at least 350 grams of carbohydrate per day. Their insulin levels are probably really quite high. They're probably, 20, 30, 40. I don't know the units in Canada, but in the United States, the units that we use, we like to have healthy insulin levels. We like to see below 10. We like to see them even below 6 is ideal. But the person you're describing probably has insulin levels 2, 3, 4 times higher than is ideal. If that person were to jump right onto a ketogenic diet, 20 grams of carbohydrate per day, protein dialed into the correct range, eating twice a day instead of 4, 5, 6 times a day, if they jump onto that squeaky clean, extremely low carbohydrate ketogenic diet, their glucose level is going to come crashing down. Their insulin level is going to drop very, very quickly. And that can be a huge shock to the brain and body and completely unnecessary. So what you want to do is ease your way down, bring those glucose levels down more slowly and those insulin levels down more slowly so that your body has a little time to adjust to the different metabolic state. If you go from a very high carbohydrate, high insulin lifestyle overnight to an extremely low carbohydrate, low insulin lifestyle, that's such a huge shock to your brain and body. You can get severe headaches, you can get dizziness, you can see your blood pressure drop, you can see your blood glucose levels drop, you can feel hypoglycemic, and you can lose a lot of excess water weight very quickly, which can make you feel lightheaded. If you're taking blood pressure medications or blood sugar lowering medications, you can very quickly be in a quite dangerous situation where your glucose levels could drop to hypoglycemic range and your blood pressure could drop to the point where you could pass out, because the diet itself isn't dangerous. But if you combine it with drugs that are trying to do the same thing the diet is really effective at lowering blood glucose levels. It's really effective in many cases at lowering blood pressure. And those are healthy changes. Those are things you want. You want to be losing all that excess fluid that you've retained from eating all that starch and sugar. You want to lose that fluid. You want your blood pressure to come down. You want your glucose levels to come down. But if they come down too fast, it can be dangerous. So those medicines are doing the same thing that the diet is trying to do. And when you combine them together, you can quickly end up in a rather dangerous situation. And that's why in the book, I recommend that people start with this 90 grams of carb per day plan first. And that if you're going to go to a ketogenic level and you're taking any kinds of medication, prescription medication, or if you've had any kind of serious health issues that have required physician supervision, any kind of health problems or serious mental health issues in the past, or a history of high risk situations, it's really important to work with a professional who understands ketogenic diets and medication management and medical situations to navigate that transition period so that it'll be safe and comfortable. And it can absolutely be done, but you just have to know how to manage those medications and what to watch out for.
You get into this in your book, and I found it really interesting. Things like curcumin and turmeric, blueberries. We have all these plant compounds and different plants that are touted as healthy for the brain. Talk more to how we've been misled.
Right. So that chapter is the antioxidant myth. And really, it's wishful thinking. So researchers looked at people who seem to be healthier. When they look at healthier people, they think, oh, maybe it's because they eat more plants. That's a guess. That's a theory. So they think, okay, what is it about plants that might make them healthier? What is the big difference between plants and animal, between plant and animal foods. One of the biggest differences is that plants contain fiber and animal foods don't. So they think, oh, maybe it's high fiber diets are good for us. But the other big difference is plants are naturally loaded with chemicals that don't exist in animal foods. These are called phytochemicals or phytonutrients. Just means plant chemicals, molecules that are not found in animal foods. So there is a theory that maybe it's because plants contain these special molecules that animal foods don't contain. And now that's a theory that's still very popular today, even though there's no evidence to support it. These molecules are really there for the plant's purposes, not for our health. We don't absorb them well. We don't require them. We don't have receptors for them. They are not nutrients. There's no biological requirement for these molecules. We have our own antioxidants inside of ourselves. We make our own very powerful antioxidants. We do not need antioxidants from plants. What we need to do is we need to stop overwhelming our own natural internal antioxidants with too many of the wrong things. So we're eating in a way that's creating so much oxidative stress, these free radicals, these oxygen-free radicals that they're like little bulls in a china shop and they damage everything they run into. We are eating in a way that is creating so much oxidative stress that our own internal antioxidant system becomes overwhelmed and can't mop them all up. If you eat right, your body's cells will be able to make enough antioxidant to deal with the amount of oxidative stress that we're naturally supposed to see in the world. We just were never designed. We did not evolve to expect these tsunamis of, glucose and vegetable oil, refined carbohydrates and refined vegetables that overwhelm our antioxidant system. So these plant molecules, when you isolate them in a test tube, they do behave as antioxidants, but they do not behave as antioxidants in the human body because, number one, we don't absorb them well because we don't need them. The body is not trying to. The body is not designed to absorb them. It kind of wisely rejects them. And the little bit that does get through, we immediately detoxify and remove from our systems as fast as possible. Those are not signs that these are molecules that we are welcoming into our systems that we require for our health. They're signs that we are trying to avoid exposure to them. And when you look at the properties they actually have in the human body, they can cause problems. They can actually interfere with our healthy antioxidant and anti-inflammatory systems. So when you eat them in a whole food, they're relatively safe because they're in small amounts. They're not concentrated. They're not extracted. And our body kind of knows, okay, we don't really want to absorb these. We don't need these. When you isolate them and concentrate them like a drug, and this is what we've done with resveratrol from red wine. This is what we've done from flavanols in chocolate. This is what we've done with the antioxidants in blueberries, and on and on and on. Curcumin from turmeric. When you extract those molecules and concentrate them to try to get more of that antioxidant benefit, you're also going to get a lot of side effects. And you're going to have to manipulate those molecules so that they can sneak past our own defenses, because otherwise we're not going to be able to absorb them. So really, I understand the appeal of the antioxidant strategy. Like, who doesn't want to just improve their brain health by eating more chocolate and drinking more red wine, right? So sign me up. It unfortunately just doesn't work, because what you're getting with the chocolate and the red wine isn't just that the science says it doesn't work, but you're getting these antioxidant molecules that are designed to protect plants from their own oxidative stress. You're getting these molecules that work in plants but don't work in humans, but you're also tending to get them alongside a gigantic dose of either sugar or alcohol, which are powerful promoters of oxidative stress. So if you're drinking a smoothie that's loaded with lots of colorful fruit antioxidants like blueberries and all that sort of stuff, but it's got 100 grams of sugar in it, you are causing the very problem that you're trying to solve. And the same thing with alcohol, as we talked about before. Yes, you might be getting that resveratrol, which theoretically might be doing something in a test tube, but you're getting a whopping dose of alcohol, which there is no question that that is dangerous for your health and is going to promote a tremendous degree of oxidative stress. So I understand the appeal of this. Who doesn't want to just add things to their diet to try to, make things better? The psychology is, it feels, proactive and powerful, and it's easy, of course, much easier to do that. And it's profitable. It's profitable for the superfood industry, right? These are not whole foods that are being promoted. These are products that are being sold by manufacturers. They're making millions and millions of dollars off of this belief. So what you really want is you want to harness the power of subtraction. It's harder to do, but it actually works. You remove the things, you subtract the things from your diet that are causing the problems in the first place. So then you won't need to, put your faith in these risky, ineffective strategies that are costing you money and they're really not working. So, if you want powerful mental health, if you want real change to your mental and physical health, you have to make real changes to your diet. You have to restructure your diet from the ground up in ways that make biological sense. You can't just sprinkle some superfoods on top or nibble at it around the edges by taking a few of the bad things out, which is, in my opinion, what the Mediterranean diet does. It takes a few of the bad things out, but leaves a lot of risky things in. You really have to, if you're serious about this, you really want to change your diet in these fundamental ways that make biological sense. And that's when, within days to weeks, you will see, in most cases, really noticeable changes, noticeable improvements to your mental and physical health that are so motivating that people want to continue because they actually work.
As you talk about these plant toxins and us as people trying to take them in as superfoods and trying to manipulate the body, it reminds me back to the glucose part of the conversation where you talked about how likely the safest way for our body to regulate glucose is to not try and take it in for energy, but let the body produce what it needs. So I was forming a connection there as you're explaining that.
Well, that's a great point, Jesse. I love what you did with that, because our body is trying to heal. It's trying to restore balance, and it knows how to do it. It's equipped to do it. How would we have survived all these millennia if it didn't have its own systems in place? Very elegant systems we've evolved to protect ourselves against inflammation, against oxidative stress, right? And to allow ourselves to heal when we're injured or sick. We're equipped to do all of that if we don't mess it up, if we don't introduce products and food-like substances and chemicals and all these other things in an effort to try to control it and make it better. It ends up backfiring. You can trust your body to heal and protect itself if you feed it properly. So one thing I say in the book, and I've been saying recently in presentations, especially to nutrition conferences. I just spoke at a nutrition conference in London to a group of very intelligent, very experienced nutrition practitioners who really believe in the power of food as medicine, as do I. But what I like to say, and I know it sounds a little bit controversial, is food is not medicine. Food gives you the parts, the components, and the energy that you need, that your cells need to function at their best. If you feed your body properly, you will not need medicine. Medicines are there to interfere with your normal biology and try to correct something that's wrong. If you're eating properly, you're a lot less likely to have to turn to those strategies, because all medicines, including medicines that are extracted from plants, that are natural and come from plants, all medicines have side effects. All medicines are I was taught in medical school, I'll never forget this line, medicines are poisons with positive side effects. That's what I was taught in medical school by a pharmacology professor. And I never forgot that because that's what's going on. You won't find a single medicine in the world that doesn't have side effects. If you eat the right way, you're going to have to turn to those risky strategies so much less often than other people do. You're going to have less inflammation, less oxidative stress. You're going to heal more quickly. Your brain chemistry is going to be more stable. Your cells are going to be more resilient. And if you give them what they need to function at their best. And if you don't overeat, and if you don't eat too frequently, and if you eat the right things, you will naturally go into ketosis, at least overnight. If you're not overeating, a lot of people just naturally go into ketosis overnight if they're not overwhelming themselves with too much carbohydrate. And you'll enter healing mode overnight that allows your cells to recover from the stress of the day. And the stress of the day includes processing food. Processing food is stressful on the body. It takes a toll on you when you have to eat, right? But there's a price you pay. Every time you eat, you're generating a little bit of oxidative stress. And that's why we have antioxidants in the first place, is to mop up those free radicals that we can't avoid. You've got to eat, but that's the price you pay. But if you overdo it, if you overwhelm your system by trying to process food 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, and the wrong foods at that, not enough nutrients, too much energy, too much carbohydrate, and too much oxidative stress, that's going to cause damage over time. And so one thing I say in the book is that even for people who don't want to be on a ketogenic diet all the time, or be in ketosis all the time, or don't need to be in ketosis all the time, I believe that human beings, for optimal health, all human beings, whether they currently have a mental health issue or not, whether they're currently overweight or not, all human beings will be healthier if they go into ketosis on a regular basis, even if it's just overnight, right? To give your body a break, get those insulin levels down, and enter that healing mode that can only take place when insulin levels are nice and low. You can't be healing and processing food at the same time. So, and that's going to go a long way towards protecting your health for the long run.
And what I'm noticing at this part of the conversation is that if people do embrace what you're talking about here today, there is a real simplicity to it. It is different, radically different than what the average person is doing, but eating less frequently, cutting out alcohol, cutting out caffeine, cutting out all these different supplements that come from plants, resveratrol, curcumin. There is a simplicity to what you're saying if you really listen.
It really is. Nutrition is not rocket science. We're the only creature on the face of the earth that, thinks that we need to do randomized controlled trials to figure out what to eat. I mean, it's really very simple. When you look at nutrition science, for 100 years, we have known almost everything we've needed to know about the nutrients that cells need in order to function at their best, vitamins and minerals and all of that. And we know so much about what's inside the foods we eat. The biochemistry, the biology of food is very well understood. We know that resveratrol is in grapes. We know that curcumin is in turmeric. Like, we know what's inside the foods we're eating, right? Right down to these tiny little molecules. We've been studying food and nutrition science for over 100 years now. So, nutrition is actually very simple. If you know which nutrients cells need, and you know which foods contain those nutrients, and you put that information together, it becomes really simple and really obvious to figure out where the nutrients are and how best to obtain them. We also understand which foods damage the brain and the body. We know that high sugar diets are extremely dangerous. We know that alcohol is dangerous. We know that these refined seed oils are anything but natural. And while we haven't figured out exactly what the risks are, there's certainly no proven benefits there's no reason to consume them. So why take that risk? We understand. I mean, it's so simple, but so what stands in the way? So what is standing in the way of us eating following these simple whole food strategies? Eat whole foods that don't cause your blood sugar to run too high or to become unstable. Whole foods, whole plant and animal foods that are nutritious and that we have evolved to eat over, hundreds of thousands of years. What is standing in the way of us doing that? One thing is addiction to processed foods, high sugar foods. And another thing is a lot of bad science, a lot of bad research that has that's caused people to have the wrong beliefs about nutrition in their heads. Things like whole grains are essential and good for you, and red meat causes colon cancer. These are there's no evidence that those things are true. So between the bad research and the love of delicious, addictive foods that are high in refined carbohydrates, like cereals and smoothies and yogurts and ice cream and cookies and chips and pizza, and I could go on, chocolate. Those things are delicious, but they also can be for many people quite addictive, and hard to imagine letting go of. And I think those are the main obstacles. It's not the science, the biology is crystal clear. It's very, very simple, as you say. But human beings are more complicated psychologically.
Let's talk more to the grain piece. In your book, you talk about grains, and you say that if somebody's going to make one change within a whole foods diet, that's going to be most profound, it's to get rid of the grains. And up until recently, they've been the base of the food pyramid. We've been told, eat our grains. Talk about why this isn't a good idea.
Well, grains, whole grain, let's not even talk about refined grains. Whole grains are, when you look at the biology, when you look at what's inside of a grain and what the human body needs, it becomes very clear that whole grains are some of the riskiest and least nutritious foods you can eat. So why would you want to base your diet on a food that is extremely poor in nutrients to begin with, and is very high in something called anti-nutrients, which interfere with our ability to use some of the nutrients that they do contain, and which naturally contain high amounts of defensive plant toxins, which are designed to protect the embryo, the seed that's inside those grains, which is the future generation of the plant. So these foods are the least nutritious and riskiest foods you can eat. They pose real, they have molecules within them that pose real risks to thyroid health, to immune health, to gut health. And the only nutrient that they're reliable for providing for you is starch, is carbohydrate, which again is optional. Starch is complete. So I say in the book, unless you have no other choice, and there are people in the world who don't have another choice. There are places in the world where grains are an important source of calories and must be consumed because they don't have access to higher quality foods like animal foods. Unless you have no other choice, these are the riskiest and least nutritious foods you can eat. Why base your diet on that food group? It makes no biological sense.
The way you broke that down, it's just all disadvantage. It's crazy.
It is all risk and no benefit. The only benefit is calories if you can't get calories somewhere else. And we need calories. We need energy, right? That's the only situation in which I want you to turn to a whole grain. And this is the problem with the research. The research isn't thinking about food. The research is thinking about nutrition from 50,000 feet, looking at dietary patterns without looking what's actually inside those foods and what the real pros and cons are of eating those foods. The real pros and cons of including red wine with your diet. The real pros and cons of eating grains, especially wheat and oats. The real pros and cons of getting your protein from legumes like soy and nuts and seeds instead of getting it from animal foods. The whole, I call that section of the book the whole truth about whole foods, because most of what we understand about whole foods diets is half-truths, that whole grains are good for you. The reason we think that is because they're better than refined grains, not because they're better than no grains at all. That's what we really want to know. Do we need to eat this stuff? Do we need to eat grains at all? Why? There isn't a single thing in a grain in a kernel of wheat that you can't get more safely and in higher quantities from another food. There's nothing in a whole grain that you can't get elsewhere and wouldn't be better off getting elsewhere.
And I think we just need to be honest with people where, okay, this is different than what you've been hearing. It can sound harsh, but is what you're doing right now working for you and other people? And we're seeing how sick the population as a whole is right now. We want to see people get results. And that's why we're trying to cut through all the BS here and really tell it to people like it is. And it is radical. But I really want to get this message out to people that just because it's radical, it's still worth it. Give this a try. What we're saying today is low risk, high return. And it's different than what you've been doing. And likely what you've been doing isn't working for you. So give this a try. And again, I just really want people to get the truth and then have the opportunity to make an informed decision on how they feel their body.
Jesse, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. So most people are eating in a way that they've been told is healthy, which is actually working against them. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault if you're eating. You've been following the recommendations and doing your best, but you're not feeling well, and you can expect more. So I like to say, I'm nutritionally pro-choice, right? But I want that choice, just as you said, to be informed choice. I want you to know what the real risks and benefits are of these different food groups, and then you can do what you want with that information. So, if for example, there's somebody listening right now who prefers a vegan or vegetarian diet, even though that's not biologically optimal, it's if you understand, you might be making the choice you might be making it for a reason that has nothing to do with health. Many people who choose plant-based diets are doing it for compassionate reasons, and that is just as valid a reason to follow the diet of your choice as any other reason, right? So, but I just want you to have the right information, because there are some people who are eating a vegan diet purely because they've been told it is the healthiest diet for them, and that is simply incorrect. It's biologically not true. So I want people to have the right information, then you can decide based on what your priorities are. But most people out there with a mental health condition who have never tried changing their diet in these ways, I want you to know that there's a lot of hope here, that, changing your diet can be a powerful mental health intervention. It can be much more powerful even than most psychiatric medications in many cases. But you have to know which changes are the right ones to make, and they're not the ones that you're used to hearing about. And it is worth it, as Jesse said, to try this. It's very low risk, very high potential benefit, and you owe it to yourself to figure out what's possible. You give yourself 3 to 4 months to see whether or not this can help you, and then you can decide, if it's worth it to you to keep going, because whatever you're doing now may not have been working for you. So now, if you're taking a prescription medication or have any history of serious symptoms, or are taking have any health conditions, it's especially important for you to work with a professional if you're going to make these changes. There's all kinds of information in the book about what to watch out for and why. But even just making the whole foods changes, so changing, for example, to something that a lot of people call a paleo diet. It's not a low-carb diet. It's not a ketogenic diet. It's just a healthier diet. The carbohydrates come from whole foods instead of, and not from grains and legumes. They come from fruits and vegetables, instead of grains and legumes. And so, and it includes some animal foods, which is really important for you to be able to get all your nutrients. And it's a much healthier diet, much healthier dietary pattern. Makes a lot more biological sense. And, start there. If not, like Jesse said, if the one change you make is to remove grains from your diet, that's a great step in the right direction.
And I think part of what I was getting at there is, if people are going to amp themselves up, make the changes we're talking about today, I want them to at least have a chance at success. And I think a lot of times, even in our world, we tell people, cut down on fruit. The processed grains need to be whole grains. A lot of stuff that's moderate advice and in the middle. And for people that have, say, a mental health challenge, or they're metabolically deranged and they're on their way to type 2 diabetes, I don't think we're doing people any good by giving them that middle of the road advice. And that's something I'm trying to take a strong stance on with this show now, and tell people, even if it isn't easy and it's more radical, but at least give people the truth in what it is so they have the opportunity to be successful, because maybe they only have the energy to give this a go one time. And if they're still including a bunch of fruit and a bunch of grains, they likely aren't going to see that result they're looking for. And maybe they just decide to push diet aside after that and don't give this a real go when there is so much potential here. So I'm making a point here, putting my flag in the ground to say we need to be radical according to where we are today with a lot of this nutritional advice. But people like me and you are going to give them, at least where we're at now, the real truth. And we want to give people the best chance of having change.
That's right. That middle of the road advice that it's usually not enough for most people. And so people are going to get frustrated and give up. If you're going to make a dietary change, you want it to be worth it, right? So some tough love, right? So there are some, if you're honest with people, and we're trying to be honest with people about what the truth is about your biology and the biology of the food, the biology of the brain, what actually makes sense, and what we see work now in increasing number of clinical trials and research and in clinical practice. More and more psychiatric practitioners around the world are using these metabolic interventions like ketogenic diets to improve even very long-standing, so-called chronic, so-called treatment-resistant, severe mental illnesses, and seeing really remarkable results. So if you want to really harness the power of your own internal healing potential, if you want to really unlock that potential, you do need not just, like I said, to kind of nibble at your diet around the edges or just kind of sprinkle some superfoods on top. You need to really restructure your diet from the ground up in ways that are going to support your body's own healing processes. And I mean, you'd really be really amazed at what's possible, because most people have been eating the wrong way their entire lives and have no idea how much better they can feel if they eat the right way. We've just had the wrong information for decades. And it's not your fault. This is you've been doing your best. A lot of people out there work really hard on their diet, thinking that they're eating the healthiest way they can, but the information is simply incorrect. So this is worth it. You are worth it. You are worth, 3 or 4 months, even if you think, oh my gosh, I could never give up X, Y, or Z for the rest of my life. Don't think about it that way. Think about it as you're going to do an experiment, and you're really going to give it your full commitment because you're taking your mental health seriously. You're going to give it a real try. 3 or 4 months, with professional help in most cases, is going to be the best way for you to go about this. And I have a directory on my website, which maybe Jesse can link to. It's a free clinician directory. It's international. You can find dietitians, you can find psychiatrists, you can find, primary care doctors, therapists, coaches who understand ketogenic diets for mental health and can support you. At least get a consultation, if not work with somebody longer term, so that you know how to go about this safely. Give this a real try, because you owe it to yourself to see what's possible for you. And how else are you going to know if the depression or anxiety or bipolar mood swings or attention problems or memory problems, how else are you supposed to know whether those are actually coming from your so-called healthy diet? What if your healthy diet has been the problem all along? And that's what a lot of people are discovering, is that there's real power in feeding your brain properly and letting it try to heal itself.
Okay, we're going to end on this. Somebody tuned into this point. They have a mental health condition. They're metabolically deranged. They likely don't have a lot of energy, but they're inspired. They're ready to take action. What's one thing they can do before the end of today to start building that momentum that's going to take them where they need to go?
I think the first thing you can do, and it's a very simple step really, is just to go through your kitchen and remove things that remove some of the things that the low-hanging fruit, the things that no human being should be eating. So take the flour and the sugar and the vegetable oils and the cereals out of your pantry and your refrigerator, and make sure that all that's left in your pantry and refrigerator are whole foods. Whole foods meaning single ingredient foods, things like meats, eggs, nuts, fruits, vegetables. Just clean up your diet in this way so that you get single ingredient foods that any child could recognize the name of and pronounce, and you'd be surprised how most of what's in your pantry and refrigerator is really not good for you. So if you just take that first step and remove those things and see what you're left with, and the next time you go shopping, just buy those whole foods. There's a list in my book, but it's really simple. It's meat, seafood, poultry, eggs, nuts, fruits, vegetables. That's really it. If you do that and you focus on those foods, you will already be healthier than most people around you. And then you can learn more about next steps that might be necessary, like carbohydrate restriction or even ketogenic diets. Even carnivore diet can be very helpful for people. So there are all these really innovative things you can do with your diet that sound counterintuitive but are really powerful. But the first step is just to understand what is a food and what is not a food. And so take all the things out of your kitchen that are not foods. The flours and the powders and the crystals and the syrups and the extracts and the sugars and the vegetable oil. Take all of that stuff out and see what you're left with, and challenge yourself to eat a truly whole foods diet for the next month or so and see how you feel.
And I'm going to ask people, if they're at the point now where they're feeling sick and tired, they're going to take this on. Comment down below if you're on YouTube and let us know you're going to try this out. And then 2-3 months down the road, after you've really given this a shot, come back and comment and let us know what changes you've noticed. And I know for me, I'm going to be really curious looking at that. I'm sure Dr. Reed as well. And that'll be inspiring for a lot of other people watching this that are thinking about embarking on this journey. So I just think that'd be a cool way to engage with the audience.
I will keep an eye on the comments. I love reading people's questions and comments, and I will dive into the comment section of this video after it gets posted, and see if I can address people's questions and cheer some people on.
And we're your support. We know you got this. Know that Dr. Reed and I have your back.
Really, we can't. The reason why we spend time doing this is because we want people to have the information that can actually help them. I mean, my tagline in the book, as corny as it might sound, is hope is on the menu, right? Hope is on the menu. Like if you've tried things, if you've tried medication after medication, even if you've been in and out of the hospital, and you've tried all kinds of psychotherapy and nothing has really helped you very much, and you think, well, there's nothing left to try. If you're willing to try one more thing, hope is on the menu. And so I would really encourage you to explore this really powerful intervention. It's helped a lot of people, and I hope you can be one of them.
Since you made it to the end of this clip, I know you're going to love the full episode. Click here to watch. I'll see you over there.
What if your healthy diet has been the problem all along? That's what a lot of people are discovering. There's real power in feeding your brain properly and letting it try.